Good afternoon. Welcome to the June meeting of the Coventry and Warwickshire Champions. My name's Adam Dent. I work for Advent Communications, a PR and media firm based here in Coventry and Warwickshire, but working across the UK. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We really do appreciate the commitment you've shown throughout these virtual streamings of logging off work and logging on to hear what's going on in Coventry and Warwickshire. For first timers who haven't been to a meeting before, if you like what you see and hear and feel you've learned something that has helped you, please do contact Nick Erskine, who runs the Champions programme through the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership, about becoming a permanent member of the network. Nick's details are all carried on the website. We hope, with the greatest of respect to Noisegate Studio, who have streamed these over the last few months, that this will actually be our last virtual meeting, and something like normal service, fingers crossed, will be resumed when you can join us at the Rico Arena, which of course from about 8 hours from now will become the Coventry Building Society Arena, on September the 10th. That's a Friday, but we will be going back to normal meetings again, and more of that later on. As you'll see, we're here today in the RSC Costume Workshop, which is the largest of its sort in Britain and which has been fully redeveloped and refurbished thanks in part to funding provided through the Coventry and Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership. Champions aims to keep you fully abreast of things that are happening in Coventry and Warwickshire so you can relay that information through your network of associates and clients. And today we've got 4 guests who hopefully will give you lots of information to enable you to do just that. So here we go. There are many things uniquely associated with Stratford-upon-Avon. We're obviously connected to one of those today. Another one is Pashley Cycles. I'm joined by Adrian Williams, who's the owner of Pashley. Good afternoon, Adrian. Thank you for joining us. Tell us, we've seen the hand craftsmanship there on the video. Tell us a bit of the background of Pashley Cycles.
Okay, well, Pashley was founded in Birmingham in 1926. It moved to Stratford-upon-Avon in the early 60s, and it is today England's longest established manufacturer of bicycles, and one really of a handful that remain in the UK. Probably because it didn't go for volume, and Rob Powell, the founder, just said, right, we'll go for the niches. So it operates in several market niches, and it makes high quality, low volume product. And if I was to take you into the company today, what you would see is a marvellous workforce, plenty of colour, of course, because of the products, and they'll be making bicycles for the consumer market. Many people know us because of our lovely classic loop-framed bicycle with the wicker basket and the leather saddle. But then as you move on, you'll see carrier cycles, cargo trikes, for our sort of many 250, I would say, industrial commercial customers, fleet users. And then if you move on again along the business, you'll see bicycles we're making for the London Hire Scheme, Edinburgh Scheme, and more recently Transport for West Midlands. So hire bikes are quite a big thing for us at the moment.
But you're not originally a sort of cycle industry man. Tell us about how did you end up here?
Yeah, well,
circuitous route.
I know, yeah, a bit strange really. I started off as an aeronautical engineer and did my apprenticeship at Westland Helicopters, which was amazing. And when I came towards the end of my apprenticeship, they offered me a job in the export commercial department, and so I sort of thought, okay, I'll give that a go. It'd be interesting to learn a bit. And so I sort of progressed sort of fairly rapidly, up in the age of 28, I was sort of reporting into the board. And but I always wanted to run my own business, and so I thought, well, actually, I've done really as much as I can do here. And I saw a job advertised in Bath for a small company, commercial director. So I thought, give it a go. I got the job. They were about 3.5 million. So in the space of about 7 years, grew to 8 million turnover.
And what did they do?
Again, it was sort of aerospace defence sort of items. And then, I had a 15 million order book. I was deputy MD. And I was 35, and I said to my wife, I really got to do the final bit of my apprenticeship. And do you mind paying the mortgage? I'll look after the girls, and I really got to set up on my own. So really sort of strange, I suppose, but it's just what I had to do. And so I explored lots of different areas. And one day a friend of mine sort of lent me a bike and said I need to get out more. So I tried the new Sustrans cycle route, and I thought, you know what, especially going back up the hill, electrically assisted bikes would be really useful. So I decided that's what I wanted to do, and so I formed a small company, to develop this in converted chicken sheds, and nobody else was doing it. It's just 29.
I was going to say, were they weren't in vogue then, presumably?
No. This is 29, 30 years ago.
Right.
And I heard from a battery supplier that Sir Clive Sinclair actually was going to launch one in London. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not so crazy after all. And so we launched outside. And the next day, the phones were busy. People wanted the product. So, and we were only a small team, but the market was there. So we're wondering what to do. And Pashley made contact and said, we're really interested in, your technology.
And was it still owned then by the founder?
By the family, yes, third generation.
Right.
And so we got talking about potential license and things, and then it went quiet. And so I called in and found that the bank had sort of moved into the business, and it was, in tricky times. And so I just offered to help out because I'd like to learn about the industry as well.
And you've not escaped since?
Well, I mean, lovely workforce, a lovely product, and so I ended up doing a sort of management buyout really, and that was in '94.
Right. I should say, by the way, while we're listening to Adrian, if you do want to ask any questions of Adrian or any of our other guests, there's an ask facility on the platform you're at, but also use Twitter, WhatsApp, any of the other social media platforms as well. So they ended up running it. Was the workforce was obviously presumably craftsmanship, long established.
Lovely.
How sort of advanced had it become? Was that one of the problems of why the bank had moved in, or not?
Well, it was the time of the mountain bike. It was all the rage. Offshoring, of course, manufacturing jobs and things was all the rage.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't that, like what was the future in this company as such. And I really hated that, because there's a lovely workforce, and as you say, some of them have been there 40 years, many skills there, and people like the product. And I was damned if I was going to get it offshored and see it destroyed, really.
Well, do you feel if it had gone for volume under the family's guidance, it would have finished like most of the others? Yeah,
because when Raleigh decided at the end of the 90s really to chuck in manufacturing, everybody keeled over at that time and became brands. Yeah.
So tell us give us a quick breakdown of sort of numbers. How many employees? How many do you make? I noticed there was 260 different sorts of bikes or something that said there. So
160 maybe 4,500 components and parts thereof.
Yeah.
55 people, 10 of those are in the sort of office staff, 45 operational production, time-served craftsmen. We do several thousand bikes a year, but as I said, into the consumer market, into cargo and to hire.
And export? I mean, we first met because we did a story about you exporting bicycles from Stratford to China, which I thought was great.
Well, we're still supplying to China, Russia as well, Scandinavia, 45 countries all over the world. We've supplied ice cream vending tricycles to Iceland. We've supplied sort of work bikes to the oil fields of Kazakhstan. We've got a dealer in New Zealand who has a shop, and it's just going absolutely amazingly.
And is that for traditional? Is it? Do people look at the traditional design that you said and think British? Is the design the British design?
British, right? Designed, and even the Chinese love it because it's where it came from originally,
And without prying too much,
right.
Finances wise, is the commercial bicycle, so the ones that you supply to the post office and to ice cream vendors and the West Midlands scheme, is that really the financial bedrock, or is it the consumer?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So historically, and it's a well hidden fact that the commercial side of the business has generally been the strongest performing part of Pashley. And that's why sort of 5 years ago, with the decline of the Royal Mail sort of cycle business, although we still do the trolleys, we made the strategic decision to go into hire bikes, and that's now half of the business. Yeah.
And you were saying that the new West Midlands scheme that's come aboard, a big change from the original sort of Boris. You didn't make the original Boris bikes, did you?
We didn't do the original ones, and for the Santander bikes as they're now called, but we do the replacements, and we're now supplying into London, we're supplying to Edinburgh, and and now into Transport for West Midlands. The difference being that the Transport for West Midlands bikes are intelligent bikes, with a docking system that we've designed into a dock that we've also designed. So the London bikes actually are dumb bikes into an intelligent dock. Right. But,
And do you have to buy that tech capability in? The software outside of it, or have you got that in-house? Or
a bit of both. We've got a really good design development team because they are our future. And we're investing in that. But we do work with partners, subcontractors and things. We've got long-established relationships. So I think people probably find it surprising when they come in and see us how technologically advanced we are, really.
And just looking at future plans, that the bikes you supply to the likes of London and the West Midlands, do you do electric assists for those?
So having started in electric assist, we're now coming very much back into it. And so this year we'll be launching a rather novel cargo tricycle because final mile delivery is very, very strong at the moment. So we have a sort of novel tilting cargo trike for that, which is electrically assisted. And also the hire bikes will be electrically assisted next year. That'll be sort of fed into the market. And finally, next year also consumer cycles. Right. So our lovely ladies will be able to have something to help them along. Not just the ladies, of course.
Of course, I was going to say, and gents, and anyone else, yes. And what...
we do supply 70% ladies.
Is that right? That's your market share, is it?
Yes. So people go on about men in lycra and things, but that's why we like the ladies.
I never thought I'd ask a guest this. Are you a man in lycra? Do you cycle at weekends and things?
I'm definitely not a man in lycra. No, I've got a governor, and I'll just wear...
can I just say, sorry, that's a make of bike, not your still. Okay.
Yeah.
And as a country, and perhaps as a region, as a country, has lockdown meant that, have you found that people are cycling more, and will it continue? What's supply been like for you, for a start?
Well, it's been of course really unusual times, and but we have been one of the beneficiaries of this whole horrible business. And we within the first 10 weeks of lockdown, we had completely sold out of our stock. 250,000 bikes just went straight out the business, and that's been maintained ever since. So on top of the hires, we're really busy. Came into this year with a record order book. And then the challenge became, because all countries the same, markets are the same, everybody's getting on bikes. The component suppliers couldn't keep up with it. So this is the fundamental problem now.
Is it easing now, or
no?
Is it, right,
no.
okay.
If anything, it's probably getting worse.
Right. And finally, you must see. You told me a great story about one when we first met. But you must see. You see your bikes pop up on the news, in magazines, celebs riding them. Tell us a story about the letter that you had.
Oh, do you mean
Ewan McGregor?
Oh yeah. Well, we had an email came in which said Ewan McGregor would like one of your bicycles. In fact, the governor, which I mentioned earlier, and so that was fine. We'll get something sorted out, and then we got an email to say he'd like to put his dog on the bike, which is always a bit worrying. So we went back and said, what size is the dog? And we got this email which had nothing on the email apart from an attachment, which was a picture of his dog sitting on scales in his kitchen in Los Angeles, where he was at the time. And by the side of it, it said 6.6 kilograms. And so we made the bike, we put a basket on it for his dog, and then Jane in the office put a toy dog in the actual bike, and we took a photograph of it outside the factory, sent it to him and said, your bike is ready. Yeah, but we've got lots of lovely customers, but it's nice to have, including royalty as well, so it's nice to have those kind of relationships.
Brilliant. Adrian, thank you very much. Just hang on just for 1 second if you can, where you are. Thank you very much indeed. Since our last meeting, several companies have joined the Champions Network. Here they are.
My name's Jonathan Ratcliffe, and I run a management consultancy helping managing directors to get more from their sales function. I've been running this business for the last 16 years, helping a variety of different companies throughout the Midlands, the UK, and indeed internationally, ranging from manufacturing, automotive, services, franchising, and wealth management. I also undertake things like sales audits and help with strategy development, as well as monitoring key performance indicators. So if that sort of thing is of interest, please do give me a call and contact me via my website, which is jmrsales.co.uk. I hope that's useful. I look forward to working with Coventry and Warwickshire Champions in the near future. I've been in the Midlands for the last 25 years and look forward to meeting some of you at the next event.
Hello there. My name is Martin Pemberton, and I'm the founder of a company based in Stratford-on-Avon called Transport Design International. I'm an industrial designer by training, and over the past 40 years, my team and I have developed a particular specialism in the design and engineering of innovative, sustainable public transport solutions. This has provided us with a huge experience which we're now bringing to benefit our local community. Coventry City and TDI are very much aligned in their sustainable agenda. Hopefully you will have heard of our collaboration to develop a new zero-carbon transit system for the city. It seems entirely appropriate then for us to sit proudly alongside other Coventry and Warwickshire businesses in order to help develop local supply chains and promote the expertise that our region has to offer.
And thank you to them, and hopefully you'll be active members of the network when we can all get together in September. On Friday, this Friday, 2 days' time, Warwickshire County Council is set to launch something called its RIF, and it could benefit you. Here to tell us what it is Rob Powell, the Strategic Director of Resources for Warwickshire County Council. Afternoon, Rob. So, RIF, what does it stand for and what is it?
Well, it's a really exciting initiative and a statement from the County Council about the Warwickshire economy. RIF stands for the Warwickshire Recovery and Investment Fund, and this is a big part of our COVID-19 recovery plan. And it's an investment of up to £140 million over the next 5 years in Warwickshire business, primarily through secured loans, but potentially also equity and mezzanine finance.
Yeah, and certainly the equity, the scale of it, and B, the equity aspect of it, makes it very unusual. What's prompted the county to take this step?
Well, a number of things. First and foremost, having a vibrant economy with the right skills, jobs, infrastructure for future growth is one of our two outcomes that we're seeking to achieve. By doing this and using our strong balance sheet and financial strength, we can try to limit the negative impact of the pandemic. We know Warwickshire is going to have a high impact on unemployment, perhaps 20,000 jobs lost. We know that there's going to be a big hit on economic output, but that the fundamentals of an economy that's grown brilliantly over 10 years are really, really strong. And this is a way that we can invest in the businesses, in the sectors that are going to drive future growth. So the County Council is really putting its money where its mouth is to keep the economy strong.
And are there particular sectors, for people who are logging on today who might qualify?
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 different pillars of the RIF, of the investment fund, targeting different types of business. And there's a prospectus that sets out the priority sectors that we think are going to drive the economy forward. So they're different according to each pillar, but areas that we're strong in, like digital and creative, areas that are going to contribute to net zero, carbon reduction, areas like future
electric assist bikes,
could be future mobilities in there, and sort of automotive technology, as the way that we use cars changes over the years. And there are many others as well that we've flagged in there. So
I mean, we must stress it's not a fait accompli. It still has to go through the final
decisions with full council tomorrow. Subject to that, we will announce the launch of the fund towards the end of this week, and we'll open for the first applications next week.
And who can apply? There's sort of 2 levels, aren't there, such in terms of amount of finance?
There are 3 pillars, effectively. The biggest is up to 90 million, and that's called the Business Investment and Growth Fund, which launches early next week. That's targeting larger businesses, 50 to 250, based in or committed to locating in Warwickshire or close to it and benefiting Warwickshire. And those will be loans or investments up to 10 million. So
they could just be over the border, but if their workforce was Warwickshire, that would count?
There needs to be a demonstrable benefit to Warwickshire, but we're not being too rigid.
You won't find Oxfordshire redrawing its county boundary or...
No,
okay.
not without the tax base changing as well. But
but
I mean, the business investment growth launches next week, and then in the autumn we'll be launching a smaller fund called Local Communities and Enterprise, 10 million in that fund, and that's targeting micro businesses, startups, SMEs, up to 50 employees, and they'll be smaller but higher volume loans up to £100,000, potentially quite a lot more of those. Including social enterprise as well. And there is a third leg called property and infrastructure, which is investment in assets that will stimulate jobs and growth. So employment land, business premises, support that we can give to businesses that would otherwise invest in Warwickshire but are struggling to find the right premises and employment land to do so.
I know the RIF applies really primarily just to Warwickshire, but it seems to me, looking at the wider Coventry and Warwickshire, it's extremely joined up, but there seems to have been a whole myriad of locally processed support that actually, when you look at it compared to other areas of the West Midlands and the country, seems to have reacted quicker than most. Well,
we've tried, and we recognised very early on the significance of the potential COVID impacts on the economy. We're lucky that we've got a really strong financial base to build from, and actually there's quite a bit in this for us. It should lever in another 100 million of private investment, should help create about 3,000 new jobs, safeguard 3,000 more. It's good from a county council point of view in terms of business rates and council tax. Of course, that helps us to fund the social care needs of the community and build better places to live. So, from presumably, hopefully, if it all goes through, what should people who are logging on tonight, what should they do? What should they look out for? Where should they go? Well, we'll be announcing the opening of the Business Investment Growth next week. If you're interested, get in touch with the County Council's Business Growth team, and they will talk to you and take you through an initial filtering. And if it looks like it's a runner, they'll appoint an advisor to help develop the bid and provide the information needed. And have you had, because obviously it's been announced that you were looking into this, have you had interest already? There is a bit of a pipeline building up, which is really encouraging, and there are some great businesses in the county who, we hope this will help and help the economy go from strength to strength. Brilliant, Rob, thank you. And then hopefully in months, years to come, we'll get you back with some of the people who have benefited from it. Absolutely. Thank you. Just hang on there for a second if you would. Thank you very much indeed. So as you've heard, please do look at the County Council website from Friday onwards and early next week, so you can take advantage of the RIF. Thank you, Rob. Many talking about innovation and also autonomous transport, what have you. Many of you will have read over recent months, and in fact years, about VLR. That's a very light rail, a scheme that's been designed and developed for Coventry. But actually that design has happened here in Stratford, well actually just down the road at Clifford Chambers, thanks to an internationally renowned design firm. And we're going to find out all about them now.
Most of our work has been involved in passenger rail, and since the 80s we've worked on design projects all over Australia, Asia, in mainland Europe, and here at home. If you've ever travelled on the London Underground, on the Birmingham Metro, or some of our intercity trains, then the chances are you will have sat in trains that we have designed. We employ a highly skilled team of designers, engineers and project managers, and more recently we've started manufacture of our own trains just down the road in Long Marston. Sustainability is now high on our agenda, and we have 2 unique prototype trains about to undergo trials in the next few weeks. One is a very light rail vehicle for Coventry, which runs purely on batteries. The other is a lightweight battery diesel hybrid train designed to operate along feeder lines into the main rail network. We hope this technology will enable the reopening of some of the so-called beaching lines that were lost in the 1960s. We have also helped pioneer new forms of automated rapid transit, such as the Vectus PRT system in South Korea. We look forward to working alongside other like-minded companies to champion the resources and the expertise available in the Warwickshire and Coventry region.
So I'm joined by the founder, Martin Pemberton. Afternoon, Martin.
Hi,
you well?
how are you doing?
Yes, good, thank you. Tell us a bit about the background of the firm. Obviously, you're the founder, so its history. When did you found it? Why did you go by yourself? Explain it.
Wow, there's a lot to fit in a short time.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, well I started out as a student in the 70s. Started out wanting to get into film production, strangely enough. Found my way into interior design at Art College. Found out that I didn't really want to design the interior of Bass Charrington pubs for the rest of my life. And found myself on a master's degree in doing industrial design engineering.
In locally or?
In Birmingham
Right.
Poly, yeah.
So that's how you came to this region?
Yeah, pretty much. And from there, I got my first job in Warwick with a design consultancy there, small design firm. And one day they got a phone call from Chrysler Cars saying, we'd like you to do some work on some cars for us. And the guy running the company said, well, actually, we just happen to have an interior design working for us, and he might be able to help out. And from that, I ended up doing advanced car styling for a few years.
Okay.
And then we got a phone call from the London Underground saying, oh, we've seen some of the work you've been doing on the cars. You ever thought about doing train interiors? And that's kind of my first experience in trains. And from there, I went out to Australia designing trains.
For the previous company?
Yeah,
before you set up?
I entered a competition on their behalf, and bizarrely we won.
Right.
And I found myself...
to design something from scratch?
To design, it was the industrial design, which is
Yeah.
essentially the styling, the ergonomics, the interiors, this kind of thing. So that was really what we were doing at the time. And it was really at that point I thought, I could be doing this for myself now, having got involved in contract negotiation and seen how the whole thing works, watched trains being built, running an office. I was basically running an office out there on my own. So that was really the tipping point. So I came back to the UK in about 87 and set up a company just outside Stratford with a couple of partners doing product design. Right. And we were called Warwick Design then. And we set up Transport Design International at the same time as a sort of brand for doing transport work.
Expecting the other one to be the bigger of the two, the product design, or not?
The transport was my passion,
Yeah.
But at the time, we were starting from nowhere, and so we needed several strings to our bows. So we had industrial designers, we had engineers, we had a workshop with model makers in it. So we were doing everything and anything. We even went to Pashley's and asked them if they'd like a new bike designing at one point.
And did they turn you down?
No, they got the bank in, as it happens. They were going into administration or something.
It's just before Adrian arrived, by the sound of it. Yeah.
So anyway, to cut a long story short, I went back to the London Underground and said, well, I was working on some of these trains for you. And they said, you've come at the right time. We're just about to start doing the Jubilee line.
Of course, right, yeah.
Would you be interested in tendering for that? And so we entered into the bidding for that project and we won.
Would that happen nowadays with such a, we're on a global scale in terms of getting designs, we've become far more of an international, it was a big step at that
it was a massive
gestation, wasn't it?
It was a massive step, but there weren't that many people doing it.
Right.
I mean, back then we were probably one of 6 people
Yeah.
And at the time I first started doing it, we were one of 2 companies, I think, doing trains. So, nowadays there'd be a lot more competition.
In the 70s, they didn't feel that designed on the interior of the British Rail trains. A lot more care taken these days. Probably.
They were designed by engineers, essentially. I mean, that's not to denigrate them. I mean, they were great
most
products.
Of them are listening, so no.
Yeah, no, got to be careful. No, but they lacked a little panache,
Yes.
shall we say,
Yeah.
which is where, I mean, there's a famous designer called Kenneth Grange, that people may well have heard of. He famously designed the front end of the high-speed train. Yeah. And he kind of put UK design on the map in that respect.
Well, he's got an incredible record of the household goods that he designed that we've all used for decades and don't realise.
Yes, razors, Kodak cameras, Kenwood mixers,
toasters,
even the parking meter.
Right, did he?
Yeah.
Right, so he's got something to answer for then.
Yeah.
I mean, we think of this area, particularly with an automotive history. Is that still true, or has it gone to more sort of all-round transport these days?
Well, I think everybody's, trying to broaden their horizons a bit. For sure, the car industry is still strong, but it's not necessarily British-owned anymore.
Yeah.
So people are turning the house to other things, and so we really set out to certainly broaden our horizons. Yeah. So we were doing work for the car industry, work for the rail industry, even work for the bus industry.
Aerospace ever, or not?
We dabbled. We tried to get involved, and it's very specialist, and you've got to be certified to all sorts of different levels to work in aerospace. A lot of people there is work in seating design and interior design, but my ambition for our company was to start developing our own ideas and our own product, and that's really what fired me up in the end. I mean,
I should really have checked this with you before. Is it coincidence that you've got Long Marston down the road as a rail testing centre? Do you only work there? Does your product get tested there, or is it just coincidence?
Well, do you know what? I didn't even know it existed at the time we set the business up. I mean, it was basically a dumping ground. Yeah. It was a graveyard for trains. It was an old Ministry of Defence site, yeah. So, it's entirely a coincidence, but a happy one.
Yeah, and do you do work there or not? Or
we've got a facility there at the moment where we're actually assembling our very light rail trains, yeah.
And before we move on to the Midland Coventry thing, tell us about other schemes that you worked on over the last sort of couple of decades. I remember a scheme that was put forward for Stratford.
Yes, this was probably the first of our own, invented projects, and I developed a bit of a passion for sort of sustainability, I guess, back in the mid-90s, and we started to think about how we could provide a lower cost transport solutions, because light rail was being built around the UK, but very, very expensively. Yeah. Even the Labour Party failed in their ambition to build 20 light rail schemes in 10 years. And we thought, well, part of the problem here is the cost. And we developed a concept for what we called a mini tram. Mm-hmm. So it was basically taking the concepts of light rail, the build concepts and the operating concepts, but reducing it down in scale so that we could operate in smaller towns, which is actually a bigger market than the cities, if you think about it.
And I presume on that sort of model, less infrastructure costs, less interruption of facilities and services?
Yeah, so our concept was basically to take a vehicle and run it electronically. So not semi-automated, not fully automated. You'd still have a driver, but it would follow a wired guidance, which we would lay in a road. So the cost, the biggest cost in any railway system is not the trains, it's the track. Yeah. Massively, and it's not just the cost of the steel, it's the cost of laying the track.
You only have to drive across the region at the moment to see that with HS2, don't you?
Oh, well, don't get me started on HS2. But just think of how many mini trams and VLR systems we could have built for that.
Were you, with respect, were you ahead of your time slightly? Do you think in that case?
Me and Clive Sinclair, yeah.
Right. Yes, I need to say to Adrian Wallace, yes, I don't know whether you should have based your design on his car, but yes. No, it is, but were you?
We were. When we
look at what you discussed then is now still being discussed now.
The mini tram, for people who never saw it, we ran it in a number of locations, including Coventry and Althorpe House, where Lady Diana was buried. It was our first operation, in fact. And we brought it to Stratford, and we ran it for about 6 months around the town centre. And it was a bi-directional electric, very narrow bus, effectively. Yeah. That had the capability of running electronically, although the council wouldn't let us bury the wire in the ground at that point. Yeah. And it was, apparently it got the highest rating of any project they'd ever trialled ever in the history of Warwickshire County Council, at 97% approval rating.
And here we are 20 years on.
And then
VLR
they didn't follow it up. Yeah.
And just before we come to VLR, tell us where you work on international schemes, don't you? A lot. So just give us a quick flavour.
Our bread and butter work, really, to pay the bills while I'm busy, trying to invent very light rail, was we'd work in Hong Kong. We designed trains for the mass transit system there. We've got a contract with China Rail, which is the largest manufacturer of trains in the world, designing some of their metros. We've designed for virtually every state in Australia. We've done work in New Zealand, all over Europe, commuter trains. We work with the Midland Metro, designed the Centro. I mean, I say design. In this case, it was the industrial design of the vehicles and putting the customer specification together. The trains were actually built by a Spanish company, but we are now, in parallel with that, we were trying to get started on building our own trains, and that's really where it's led us.
And I remember in the early days of VLR, obviously through our connection with and Champions and the LEP, hearing about it to begin with, it seems to have grown. I mean, I asked, because I'm aware with a small p, politically you don't want to get these things wrong, and it's a combination of led by Coventry City Council in partnership with Dudley Council, WMG, Transport for the West Midlands, funded through the government's local growth fund, through the LEP. It really does seem to have grown in terms of it becoming a regional thing now, regional effort. Is that true? I mean, it's got a lot of traction.
Very good, very funny, yeah.
No, it has though, hasn't it? It's become.
No, it has. Yeah,
I heard conversations about it, and then a year later, 2 years later,
we were a bit of a lone voice back in the days of the mini tram. We're talking 20 years ago. Yeah. When battery technology wasn't really there at the time. We were still trying to run on lead acid traction batteries. Yeah. But the whole battery situation's matured. We can now get very impressive life out of batteries, and people have gradually come on board with the whole concept. So it's a much easier sell now than it was.
Well, tell us about the Coventry. So where's it at? How far will it run? How many people will it take? Give us the full rundown of what hopefully in a few years will be running in Coventry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Coventry Very Light Rail really spun out of another light rail project we were doing at the time, and Coventry asked us to, if it was possible to take this other product we were developing and modify it for Coventry. We said, well, it's not really entirely suitable, but all of the building blocks are in place for us to design something special, and which is what we've in fact done. So it's going to be a lightweight tram, and we probably haven't really explained what very light rail is, but it's all about the lightness of the infrastructure. Not the lightness of the train helps with the lightness of the infrastructure, but it's about keeping the cost down. So we've got a very lightweight train which will run on very small wheels, very lightweight bogies, all electrically powered off batteries, and it will be running through the streets in Coventry eventually autonomously.
Yeah.
So
driver to begin with, but then as the technology improves, or
it's not that the technology doesn't exist. It's really having the protocols in place and having the confidence to operate it in the public environment, because there is no precedent really for this. I mean, metros are automated. There are lines on the London Underground that are automated, but they run on a segregated track. They've got passenger doors on the station, so you can't jump in front of the train. You don't have that in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
So although we can run it autonomously, we've got to take baby steps before we would be able to run it fully autonomously. In the meantime, there will be a driver on the first trains.
And where are we we're close to testing, aren't we?
We're very close to testing, yeah. Towards the end of the summer, we'll start the testing and doing the trials and commissioning of the first demonstrator unit, yeah. And then full commercialisation is probably going to, follow about 4 years hence.
And is that because obviously I've listed the partners there, do they have a stake in it, or when it rolls out, when Coventry also becomes Cleethorpes and Cambridge, is that your commercial advantage, or are they partners in the scheme? How will the commercialisation and rollout work?
Well, there's lots of different people involved in this, as you can imagine. Yeah. I mean, Coventry.
I've had them all listed. Yeah.
You've got the crib sheet there. Yeah. It's Coventry's project.
Yes.
And we are subcontracted by Coventry to provide them, with a product that we've been able to invent against their specification, if you like. And I think Coventry City Council will own certain intellectual property in that, and we will. Yeah. But ultimately, I think Coventry hope very much they'll be able to sell the concept and the product to other like-minded councils around the country.
So quite far-sighted of them.
So hopefully all the partners will benefit in some form,
Yeah. So how long before I can hop on a VLR and there's no driver on it and it takes me up to Warwick University or the hospital? Or...
Well, as I say, we'd like to think in about 4 years' time. Right. But there's a fair bit of water to flow under the bridge first. There's transport and works acts to do. There's environmental impact studies. There'll be public inquiries. There'll be planning. There's a lot of things happening at this moment in the background to enable it to happen.
But it's almost like very light touch rail.
It's very light touch. I mean, part of the thinking behind very light rail is you've got a lot of utilities and things buried in the road, and the cost of moving those utilities is immense. Now, if you're able to build track over the top of some of them, and then you remove sections of track so that you can access them in the case of an emergency, and do that fairly quickly and cheaply, then that is saving a huge amount of installation cost at the beginning.
That's almost the golden thread, if you can get that, presumably, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an integral part of the whole thing. Every part, the tram or the train in itself is part of a system. It's just one component part. For me, it's the most exciting bit, because it's got the wheels on it and it moves and people get on it, and that's the bit they go, wow, I like that, But actually, there's an awful lot of other stuff that has to all come together. There's the ticketing philosophy, the operational protocols, as I say, for the automation. There's a lot of people going to get involved in this. It's not just going to be one company.
No, but Martin, that's been brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to taking a ride on it. Be good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just hang on for a second, if you wouldn't mind.
Right.
But now we're going to turn our attention to our host, the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Under a sweet bird's throat, who could want for a sweeter note? Under greenwood tree, should I be lost, that's where I'll be. Make of life what can be done, but to live and love by the will of sun. Rise by birds as they call out day, sigh love into a pillow as it fades away. Under greenwood tree, should I be lost, that's where I'll be. Under greenwood tree, should I be lost, that's where I'll be.
And I'm joined by the Executive Director of the RSC, Catherine Mallyon. Catherine, thank you for hosting us in this fantastic facility, and welcome.
Thank you, and it's great you can be here, and just look at these costumes made here. It's brilliant. No, it is, and we'll come on to that in a short while. Obviously, don't want all this interview to be about the misery that we've had with COVID over last year, but just want to talk about it. When did you first realise that it was going to have an impact on your business? Where was there a certain moment, or was it a longer process than that? I think it was a longer process. It was a sort of gradually dawning realisation over literally months. I looked back in preparation for this to think, when did we start talking about it? And it really was back at the start of January last year that internally we were having conversations. We had a pandemic on our risk register for a while.
January before.
January. Warwickshire County Council had been running training in responding to pandemics, which we'd all been part of. So when the news started coming out of China, we were quite alert to it. And actually it was January 2020, the very end of that month, that we made our first announcement in the staff newsletter about it. I think at that point, completely ignorant of where it would have gone, but we were conscious of it. So as those weeks passed, we were all the time, like everybody, watching its progress. But even at the start of March, the information we were getting was about no need to close public spaces, no worries at all. Literally 2 weeks later, 16th, 17th of March, we were completely closed, suddenly closing with unclear messaging on the day. I think that's the thing I remember most, not actually being clear whether the guidance was to close or not close. And it wasn't indeed till the next day the government confirmed they had said to close. And that, that was, we had shows running, in London, across the country, abroad, and they all just literally stopped overnight.
And did you operate in China? Because you obviously had a lot of Chinese people coming here.
Yes, we have. We didn't at that point.
Oh,
we were going
okay.
to tour later in the year to Japan and the States, and all that had to stop. And we have toured to China in the past, and we do a lot of work with China, but we weren't there at the time.
I remember the weekend you talked about. I was at a wedding at the registry office in Stratford, and thought there was something happening when the registrar told the couple, "You may now bump elbows with the bride," and that was the first. I remember thinking this is really impacting on life. So in terms of you, literally on the day that shutdown was announced, that was it. So how do you spring into action as a sort of chief exec? Was everybody furloughed? Give us some idea of proportions.
It took, you sort of look back, and initially we were very clear, that was where we were. The theatres were closed. We didn't know where that was going to take us. Our main message to our teams was, this is an important and serious matter. We don't know what the impact's going to be on you individually, on your families. Do what you need to do in that context, and that was our message. But of course, behind the scenes, we were busy working out what did it mean, from the nuts and bolts to how do we close things down safely without people working, but also how much had we got in the bank to keep going? Because of course you remember it was some weeks before the CGRS scheme came into being. We had to take decisions about continuing to pay people. Our whole approach through the whole thing has been what's best for the teams, because they're the people who deliver everything for our audiences. So that was the focus.
And I suppose unlike if you just said you were a company, fully commercial company, a lot of your people are subcontractors individually, presumably, because of actors and technicians. And what sort of proportion? Do you know what proportion?
Yes, so we're a company of well over 1,000 people, of which sometimes a third or more can be freelancers. And as you allude to, it was the furloughing scheme came in for employees, and there were later schemes for freelancers, but they didn't have the same reach, and a lot of our freelancers and freelancers across the sector have been really badly hit by it, and it continues to be a real challenge.
The thing I would say, they're very creative people, aren't they? And a lot of bounce back, not to the same level maybe, but are doing some quite unusual things. You do see stories of certainly actors and actresses they've sort of got great personal skills that they can go and do other things. Have you found that a lot?
Yes, and of course, and as well as the freelancers doing a range of work, our furloughed employees, of course, like many people were furloughing and helping in the community and doing a lot of things while on furlough. But I think even given that, we can't lose sight of how hard people have been impacted, and enormous drops in income, and then of course the whole, as you say, we want to dwell on moving forward, but the pandemic has had a really serious and sad impact, hasn't it? And that's been part of the picture as well.
And does it affect you? Because I know you're a big property holder, for instance, in terms of accommodation for actors. I presume that every level of your business was impacted.
Oh, completely, yes. I mean, literally, most of our non-fundraised, not government income disappeared overnight. We weren't as badly hit as some people in our sector, but absolutely complete shutdown, which of course knocks onto the Stratford and the regional economy as well. So we're very, very conscious of that. Yeah, so you couldn't find a part of the business that wasn't impacted adversely, I would say.
Well, I think at the time, the leader of Stratford Council, Tony Jefferson, said you were the third worst impacted district council in the country because of the visitor economy, but then you've also got Gaydon down the road and Jaguar. Yes,
that's absolutely what I've heard, and I think for the council it's got enormous ramifications, which will take time to unfold and return to where everyone was before the pandemic, won't it?
And as a leading figure in the industry, how good has theatre and leisure been at lobbying government, and how well do you think, each sector's got a view on how well the government has supported it? How do you view the government's support being for your sector?
Yeah, so the government, has responded that the Cultural Recovery Fund is of an enormous size, 1.5 billion and growing. So it would be churlish to say there hasn't been any. There absolutely has, and I think that responds to the effective representation from the sector, but also recognition of the importance of that sector to this country from a very individual level to the positioning of the country itself internationally. But as I said, the impact on the freelancers, the ongoing impact, the slight, uncertainty and maybe not full confidence in opening up, that's a problem now. The inability to get insurance for some types of activity continues to be a problem, and we need to keep advocating for that, which we do. Of course, we do, through our MP, through our sector, directly to DCMS, directly to government ministers. So we're very active there as ourselves, but also importantly as a sector-wide group of companies.
Do you think, perversely, the standing of theatre and live entertainment has actually been increased by this? Because beforehand it was a nice to go to, whereas people have actually understood its proper human value.
I think that's right, and actually I think there's a real demand now, isn't there? Pent-up demand for that shared experience together in a space. And at the same time, what has everyone turned to during the pandemic? And it is forms of arts and culture, isn't it? From music to film to soap operas to stream productions that we've done, and it's to the whole, taking it a little bit further, the consumption of everything digitally, again has demonstrated the way that companies like ours can respond and do things differently. But absolutely that wish to share things together and have enjoyable experiences is really strong now, isn't it? And you sort of take it for granted, and we don't do that now, do we?
No. And do you think there will be a reticence amongst people coming back now? Because the sort of hopeful emerging from this has been a gradual process. Have people been weaned back into mixing in public more with other people? Or do you think it will have a long-term impact? We'll come on to the outside theatre in a minute, but for internal productions?
Yes, I think people naturally are hesitant, aren't they? We've had a whole period of really understanding the risks of too close contact, and that's still the same. And we do a lot of audience surveys, as do a lot of our colleagues, and people want to come in, are keen to, but they also want to be reassured that they're coming into safe spaces, which absolutely theatres can deliver. I've been to shows inside in theatres recently, and they're really safe, welcoming environments. But as things get busier, we do know there's a reluctance and a hesitation from people. But over time, hopefully people will become more confident. But of course, sadly as well, people with specific vulnerabilities, it's going to be a very different story for them, and we have to think about that and make sure that the way of streaming productions and sharing things responds to that as well.
And you've gone, you could argue, a bit old school. I see a new theatre springing up. Explain about the outdoor theatre.
Yes, so the Manfred and Lydia Gorvey Outdoor Theatre. It's garden theatre. It is glorious. It's if you're in Stratford, come and have a look. Go and walk past as you go home this evening. It's a really lovely outdoor, open amphitheatre style theatre that in the next couple of weeks until September we'll be presenting Comedy of Errors. And that's, that can be socially distanced. It's very spacious seats. It's been designed so that when we gradually, those distances can get closer, it'll still feel very, very comfortable.
What sort of capacity?
Well, it'll be in the hundreds, and it will grow up to about 500 depending on what we're allowed to do. And we decided to do it last February, most recent February. And of course, things were even more uncertain then than they are now, and we thought the best way we can make sure we can share our theatre with audiences is to go outdoors, and that's what we've done. We're selling tickets very fast, a lot of demand. It'll be a great show and a great experience, but it is a new thing for us. We did last summer, of course, we did Shakespeare snapshots, actors in the Dell. We kept an acting company on and were very engaged, but this will be the full RSC stage productions in an outdoor theatre.
I'm sure there's people from Stratford District Council Planning Department listening, so you might want to be careful how you answer this. Has it got a limited time frame? May we still see it there in 10 years' time? What's the thought?
It will still exist and be able to use. Of course,
so it's not a limited time period of planning.
Well, as a theatre, it's has planning permission to be in situ until September when we finished, and we would want to take it down anyway and reopen the gardens. But and just to say, to have the opportunity, the planning department has been so helpful and supportive, and it's a new thing, and it's been supported all the way through. But my point was more that it's a sustainable initiative for us, because we want to be able to reuse it either in Stratford, elsewhere in the region, and it can be used again. But of course, if we want to put it up again, we'll have to get the right planning.
Of course, quite right too. And sort of long term, how will this have, can you say this will have set the RSC back 5 years, 6 years? How long do you think it will take to recover from this?
It depends which lens you want to use to answer. I mean, I think in terms of recovering to presenting our productions, delivering our learning, working in the community, all the digital innovation, that we're back doing that now.
Yeah.
We kept doing a lot of it through the pandemic. So that motivation will still be there and will be fine. But we are only able in the autumn to open the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. We've got 2 more theatres that will take time to reopen. And the support we've had from the government has been in form of a loan.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to generate money to repay that. So we're in a different place. I don't know if it's necessarily set back, but it's absolutely different. It's going to take us a year or 2 to get everything open and running again.
And financially,
but we will,
are you talking decades for it to
the
recover?
loan's a 20-year loan, and so once we get to repaying it, that'll be around $1.5 million a year, which in the old world we would have been reinvesting, doing
Yes,
more
of
with,
course.
that we're going to have to repay the loan through. So that will put a different framing on our budgeting and our thinking, and that once we get out of that, of course, we'll be in a very strong position. But undoubtedly it will change things in the years to come. But as I say, what the task for us is to deliver in the same way and try and reach as many people and get back as quickly as we can.
Did any theatres, I saw that Wimbledon trousered £174 million payout because they actually had pandemic insurance. Did any theatres have it, as far as you know? Was it a thing that was
as you
taken?
say, it was very much different situations. Most didn't because it's so expensive to carry the insurance, and in the main you don't need it. And I think the real problem now is insurance that one would have carried. I'm sure other guests have talked about this. Is everything's costing more if you can get it, and so that's the real challenge going forward.
And without over-prying, I want to pry a little bit. How have you coped, when I say personally, professionally, because you're in charge of a massive world-renowned organisation, and nothing in your training could have prepared you for this? How have you coped?
Yeah, I was sort of reflecting on that, and I think you don't want to give a glib answer to it because it has been incredibly challenging. So it would be silly not to say that. But there is something about, there's a task that has to be done. It's not a lot of it. Wasn't anything anyone in my role would want to be doing particularly, but it's clearly the task to do. So there's a sort of personal motivation to do it, and. You know the RSC, it's a great team. It's a great team to work with. The sector's a very supportive sector. The region's very, very supportive. So it's never felt that I'm alone or anyone's alone with it. We've worked as a team to find our way through. And I think that's probably the answer to the question, really. It's always been a shared endeavour, albeit a pretty tough one.
Well, I was going to say, people presumably bigger responsibilities because people's livelihoods even more in focus at stake, and longer hours, I presume, for the whole of the team.
Oh yes, and particularly when it's been really tough for people being furloughed and really tough for people being working. So we're really conscious that everybody's had a tough experience, whichever place they've found themselves in. And of course, very sadly, people have lost their jobs. We've lost people we of course would never want to do, and that's happened across the piece. We've kept hours to a minimum, and people the team have taken pay cuts, reduced their hours of work to make it possible to move forward, because I think everybody realises that, as you say, it's a real personal impact as well as the impact on people who aren't then able to enjoy what we do, which is why, back to your garden theatre point, it's great to seeing it come to life.
It'll be special. I'm
yes,
sure,
it will be really special.
Yeah, I take it you'll go into the first night. You do get a seat.
Me away.
Yes, I was going to say. Look, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for hosting us. It's been fun. Third time I think the RSC's hosted Champions. So thank you very much indeed, Catherine Mallyon. We will. Thank you very much indeed. Talking about live events, just want to round off by saying the first live political event since the COVID lockdown is taking place on July the 10th. As part of Coventry City of Culture, and it's the Big Tent Festival. Political, campaigning and business leaders will be in the city debating a whole range of topics based under 4 different themes of green growth, healthy growth, creative and inclusive growth and global connectivity. Champions, I can gladly say, will get a 50% discount. Please go on to the Coventry 2021 website or bigtent.org.uk and you'll be able to see it there. You'll be able to get your discount there. And as I said at the start, please put in your diaries. We'd love to see as many people in person as possible. September the 10th at what will then be the Coventry Building Society Arena, We will be back to our normal 7:30 starts, which does seem decently early now. Used to seem quite late, not anymore. So please come along to that. We'll have top speakers. We're trying to line up some very special speakers indeed. Top networking, top bacon sandwiches. Who remembers those? Standing around chatting and shaking hands. Hopefully that will happen. As I said, thank you to everybody for logging on throughout these. We went obviously onto the normal platforms and then have gone to live streaming. Hopefully that's made it slightly more real and slightly more interactive, but we do appreciate it. You've heard today of some fantastic resources and companies that we've got in this particular area of Coventry and Warwickshire. And as we always say at the end of this, despite everything we've been through, please do tell something positive about Coventry and Warwickshire today. Thank you very much indeed.